I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro football today, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all. Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Road management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there. A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Hello and welcome to a Tuesday live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Joe Ranieri. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time, live on a Tuesday morning to look back on a doubleheader to end out Monday Night Football in week number 15 around the National Football League. 2 games, first in Minneapolis, where the Vikings are now 12-2, and where the Falcons in Las Vegas, I guess, end a 4-game losing skid, Joe, but it wasn't picture perfect out in Sin City. We've also got an NBA Cup title on the line tonight in Sin City, out there in Las Vegas, between the Bucks and the Thunder. A pretty good slate of college basketball, and of course, it is now officially game week for the first ever 12-team college football playoff. All of that and more, Joe, over these next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern.
That's it? Wow, sounds like a light week here, Ben. I guess we got to dive into it anyway, though, don't we?
Yes, we certainly do. Let's start on a Monday night to end out week number 15. Joe, when you look at the NFC North, we've got 3 teams that have double-digit wins already so far this season, and that now includes the 12-2 Minnesota Vikings. Against their divisional foe in the Twin Cities, it was a pretty comfortable win for the Vikes. Win number 12 this year, and they cover as a 7-point full touchdown favorite at home against the Bears, who have now lost 8 straight. So much for that interim bump. Minnesota wins big, 30-12 at home. A total of 43.5 does just stay under as well.
Yeah, one team played a complete game. The other team did not. But it was all about the Minnesota Vikings defense controlling the line of scrimmage, controlling that game, and making life miserable for Caleb Williams and the Bears offense. Sam Darnold wasn't great. Didn't need to be, though. That defense wasn't going to allow more than 12 points. And, boy, they were all over the field last night, Ben.
Joe, 12 wins now for Minnesota this season. 10 unders for that Vikings defense in those 12 victories. First game for Sam Darnold in now 5 in total. He does not toss at least multiple touchdown passes and does throw an interception. But still for Minnesota in that top wild card spot at 12-2, same record as the Detroit Lions. They will play Detroit in the Motor City to end out the regular season. We'll talk about the litany of Lions injuries that could impact the final 3 weeks of this campaign in just a moment. But Joe, the Atlanta Falcons last night on the road in Las Vegas against the Raiders desperately, and I mean desperately, needed to snap a 4-game slide. They did, but it wasn't great. The Falcons win 15-9. They even cover as a 5.5-point favorite in Sin City, courtesy of a blocked point after try when the Raiders scored a touchdown in the final 3 minutes of regulation. So, Joe, some good, some bad, but ultimately the Falcons do win a game at least outright they desperately had to have.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't pretty, Ben, but it's a win, right? And if I'm the Falcons at this point, that's all I'm looking for is a win. But you'd be crazy to think that there aren't some serious concerns with this offense right now, who doesn't seem to be clicking on any level, Ben. I mean, hey, congratulations, you beat the Raiders. But what's going to have to happen when you play a team above 500? This is to be determined, I think, still with this Atlanta team.
Total last night of 44.5 does stay under between the Dirty Birds and those Raiders. 10 consecutive losses for Las Vegas because of the blocked point after try, the extra point from Daniel Carlson when the Raiders did score in the final 3 minutes. The Raiders have now only covered 3 times in this 10-game skid. 2-12 tied with the Giants for an area you don't want to be tied, the worst current record in all of the National Football League. Just 112 yards, a touchdown finally for Kirk Cousins, who had not thrown a touchdown in the 4-game skid for Atlanta, but yet another interception. In the last 5 for the Falcons, only 1 touchdown to 9 INTs for Kirk Cousins. Bijan Robinson was good on the ground last night. Joe, as we look at the top of the NFC, again, the Lions still in that number 1 spot. They have the tiebreaker based on conference win percentage with the Eagles. Detroit still in that top spot within the NFC North. They own the tiebreaker currently with Minnesota, the direct head-to-head victory. But it is going to be a precarious final 3 weeks for Detroit. So many injuries this season, add on a ton yesterday that will be season-ending. Headline, Joe, by 2 superstars on either side of the football. Aleem McNeil, a torn ACL, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL, out for the remainder of this season. David Montgomery, a torn MCL, will have to have surgery. He is out for the rest of the season as well.
And it's amazing, Ben, because yet here is Detroit, right, remaining the number 1 seed in the conference, even after losing to the Bills, because they have the better conference record over the Eagles. They're 8-1. The Eagles are 7-2. So this tiebreaker is in all likelihood going to come down to who wins the AFC North last week when they got to take Minnesota on one more time.
That game will be in the Motor City for the Lions, so that is good news. Detroit still remains the favorite to win the NFC right now at plus 210, but only 30 cents in front of the Philadelphia Eagles. More injury news yesterday, of course, a ton of focus on the right ankle of Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs are calling it a, quote, mild high ankle sprain. His status, though, still very much uncertain, for Week 16, as the Chiefs on a short week will host the Houston Texans Saturday afternoon at home in Arrowhead. The line right now, Joe, not expecting Mahomes to play. Kansas City, a short 2.5-point home underdog in Arrowhead.
Well, when your attitude is coming out of the Chiefs camp, like, well, at least it's not broken. Yeah, that's a problem, Ben, because he's also not mobile now. Won't play in Week 16. And now very much the Bills are in a position to make the AFC go through Orchard Park and not Arrowhead.
And that will be the biggest thing. The Chiefs still remain a minus 195 favorite to be that number 1 seed within the AFC. The Chiefs have a 2-game advantage in terms of win-loss, But if the teams end up with the same exact record, of course, that tiebreaker would be with Buffalo based on the head-to-head. More injury news at the quarterback spot around the NFL. Seattle's Geno Smith leaving Sunday Night Football in the third quarter. The Seahawks do get some good news, though, Joe, based on that knee injury. We'll see about Geno Smith for the final 3 weeks of this NFL season. The Seahawks firmly in the race for that NFC West crown.
They are, but now at this particular point, okay, who wants it, Ben? Because that has got to be one of the most mediocre divisions we've seen in a very long time out in the West.
Right now, the LA Rams, based on the head-to-head tiebreak with Seattle, both at 8-6, are in first place within the NFC West and are the odds-on favorites at this moment. Quarterback news, but in college football, just a few days away from the start of the college football playoff, Drew Aller, Penn State's quarterback, says he will return in 2025. Will be one of the top quarterbacks next year in college football, and his Nittany Lions, an 8.5-point home favorite in Happy Valley on Saturday against SMU in the opening round.
And I think he is going to be poised to be one of the best quarterbacks Penn State has had in a very, very long time next year, Ben.
And he will return, that being Drew Aller, Joe, with his offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki. Some congruency there, a good thing. Joel Embiid injured yet again. He will be out at least a week with a sinus fracture. The short-handed Sixers in a 40-point performance out of Tyrese Maxey. A win last night on the road in Charlotte. Monday night doubleheader next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I'm actually not even on a side today. Yeah. And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Road management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
A Monday night doubleheader to end out Week 15 of this 2024 National Football League regular season. Two games on a Monday night to end out a week around the NFL. Now only 3 weeks remain in this regular season. Every game with some importance on either a divisional chase or playoff positioning if you are in the hunt for the postseason. Joe, in both of our spots last night, there was one team that is flirting with a postseason spot, and another that really the season is all but over. We start in Minneapolis, a divisional duel in the NFC North between the Vikings and the Bears, where Minnesota, that 11-win team entering last night, still trying to hunt down the Lions and put some pressure on Detroit for the divisional crown within the NFC North, and just trying to improve their playoff positioning, trying to hold off Green Bay for that top wild card spot in the NFC playoff picture. The Vikings do exactly that, as the odds expected last night in the Twin City. A triumphant 30-12 Viking victory over Chicago. Minnesota covers as a 7-point home favorite. A total that worked its way down throughout Monday to 43 and a hook does stay under. The Vikings started off this year a perfect 5-0, one of the final two remaining undefeated teams alongside the Chiefs. They covered in all of those 5 wins. They have now won 7 consecutive games. They are 4-2-1 against the number. 12 victories this year, Joe, for the Vikes, 9 of them under. That defense for Brian Flores and company playing at a very high level at a very important part of this season.
Yeah, it's great when you can win games and not play your best offensively. Sam Darnold was not particularly good last night at all. But you know what? The defense was, and the defense handled their business, which really set up them to have enough points and to have a good opportunity to be able to hold on, because Chicago, they didn't convert their first third down until the fourth quarter, Ben. You're not going to win a lot of games that way here. So kudos, though, to the Minnesota defense stepping up again at home in this one.
Yeah, absolutely so, Joe. And when you look at this Chicago team, it's been a struggle. It will continuously be a struggle. Caleb Williams looks defeated. There's not a lot of juice left for this Chicago side, who now falls to an overall record of 4-10 and has been mathematically eliminated from NFC playoff contention as a result. The Bears on the road this year, true road games, not the London game against Jacksonville way back in October. Now 0-7 straight up and 1-5-1 against the spread. The Bears have lost 8 consecutive games. They're just 2-5-1 ATS. But entering last night, their 3 non-losses against the number in that 7-game skid came against their NFC North foes. Was not to be last night. 6 of 8 consecutive L's for Chicago have stayed under. If you're looking for optimism for the Bears, you want to see the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, continue to improve. In fact, the last few weeks, that progress has halted with Thomas Brown, the interim offensive coordinator, the interim head coach. A disastrous season in 2024 for Chicago. But let's talk optimism and positivity now for Minnesota. A 12-2 football team in that top wild card spot around the NFC, in same record as of this moment alongside Detroit. It wasn't their biggest offensive output of the season. They still put up 30. A lot of people got involved last night. Cam Akers, a rushing score. Aaron Jones continues to deliver 100-yard scrimmage games, as he did a touchdown as well. And the only touchdown tossed by Sam Darnold was the opening score of the game to Justin Jefferson. 7 grabs, 73 yards, Joe, and a score last night for JJ.
Yeah, and JJ also dropped one for an easy touchdown as well, hit him right in the hands. And then, of course, a couple of plays later, they ended up turning it back over. But all in all, 7 receptions, 73 yards. Again, it wasn't great last night, but certainly it was good enough to beat the Chicago Bears, and that's really all that mattered. And also, by the way, Sam Darnold, I got to give him credit, too. He made a couple of throws last night that he absolutely wanted back. And he couldn't get him, but the Justin Jefferson drop would have pretty much put this game out of hand in the first half. I thought it was great to see Hawkinson getting involved in the game, too. When you have that many receptions with that many receivers, yeah, you can spread the ball around, which is what makes this offense extremely dangerous moving forward. And sitting at 12-2, you got to give the Minnesota Vikings all the credit in the world. They've got an interesting game against Minnesota coming up. But if you can keep getting that kind of production across the board from the guys on that list, yeah, they're gonna be just fine heading into the postseason.
Yeah, spread the wealth last night in the Twin Cities for Sam Darnold. TJ Hawkinson over his number. Justin Jefferson slightly under his receiving yards prop of 81.5, but still did find Pater. Joe, a lot of conversation about Minnesota's outlook, both in the division and the conference and maybe beyond moving forward. But here's where it stacks up right now for the Vikes. The Lions still remain a hefty odds-on favorite at minus 290 to win the NFC North. But based on Minnesota having the same exact record now at the end of 15 weeks in the litany of Lions injuries that we detailed for you at the very start of the show, that number on Detroit yesterday was minus 440. It is now just minus 290. The Lions have that favored number. Still, the Vikings, second best price. Joe, it might come down to that Week 18 regular season finale between these two clubs, but do the Vikings have some life within the NFC North?
Of course they do, and they should be really happy about where they stand right now, giving themselves a pretty good opportunity to head into that final game, Ben, with maybe, just maybe, an opportunity to be able to take down the division, something a lot of people didn't think was going to be possible this season.
We'll look at the schedule for Minnesota, what remains in the regular season now that 15 weeks are done, and we only have 3 weeks left. Up next, the Vikings' outlook for the remainder of 2024. What is that ceiling in Minneapolis? We'll debate next here on the Early Line.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting at the hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Three teams right now, at least record-wise, tied at the top around the NFC, all at 12-2. The Lions, the Eagles, and after last night's win on a Monday to end out Week 15, the Minnesota Vikings. So what exactly is the outlook for Kevin O'Connell and the Vikes the remainder of the way? Joe, Minnesota still in the running for that number one overall seed. Joe, Minnesota still in the running for that top spot within the NFC North. And Joe, Minnesota tied for the third best price to win the NFC Championship at the end of 15 weeks around the NFL at a 6-1 number. We talked about the division right before the break. Detroit is injured. The Lions had their 11-game win streak snapped on Sunday. There are some concerns about what the Lions will be able to present the remainder of the way. Do you give Minnesota at that plus 220 number to win the NFC North even a thought of a bet or a wager at this moment at the end of 15 weeks?
I don't, Ben, simply because of the remaining games in the schedule here. I mean, you're looking at Minnesota having to go to Seattle, then take on the Packers, and then go to Detroit. While Detroit is sitting there with the I throw in the towel Bears next week, then at the 49ers, and who in their right mind thinks that even as banged up as Detroit is, they still aren't capable of beating the 49ers, and then they'll finish with the Vikings. So it's a much tougher path, and since they already own the tiebreaker, a slip-up in one of those three games, certainly possible for Minnesota, at which point Detroit would be holding all the cards. It's tough to lay it for just plus 220.
Yeah, I would completely agree, Joe. Possible, plausible, you could paint a path, likely or worth even a sprinkle of plus money. Not really how I am seeing it right now. There is no doubt that Detroit's defense now has a ton of injuries, and because of how injured they have been defensively, they have allowed a ton of offense the last few weeks. But I still give the Lions the benefit. They will still be booked as a favorite. You would expect more than likely, even with the road trip to San Francisco in just a couple of weeks. And if for whatever reason it did come down to week 18 to decide a division, home field for at least one playoff game, potentially home field advantage for the entirety of the NFC postseason, the Lions are going to be booked as a favorite at home inside Ford Field against this Minnesota team. So, Joe, more than likely, let's call it 55-60%, I would say right now, the Vikings are that top wild card team. Because when you look at those standings, Minnesota will be the 5 seed at 12-2. They've got 2 games in front of Green Bay, some playoff positioning at stake this upcoming weekend between the Vikes, or at least week 17 between the Vikes and the Packers. But Minnesota's overall outlook, because right alongside Green Bay right now, Joe, a 6-1 number to win the NFC. The Lions still the favorites, plus 210. The Eagles only back now by 30 cents at plus 240. There you see Green Bay and Minnesota both at a 6-1 price. There seems to be a tier of 2, but can the other 2 NFC North teams, either Minnesota or Green Bay, maybe make a deep postseason run and contend with the Eagles and the Lions for that conference crown within the NFC?
Well, you know, and we talked about it early in the season after a couple of weeks. I thought Green Bay was very much alive to win the NFC crown and make it for a shot at the dance. I wasn't sold on Detroit. Certainly, Minnesota was never even in the conversation. We all thought they'd be falling back, but give credit to them. I still think the Packers in that tier there, Ben, are the ones that are the most dangerous, and we'll see exactly how they match up when they play in a couple of weeks. So a lot still to be determined, though, in that middle group in the wild card.
That game to be played in Minnesota between the Packers and the Vikings. And Minnesota, way back at the end of September, did beat Green Bay in Lambeau, so they already have that tiebreaker advantage. If they were to take care of the Packers, of course, in Week 17, that would for sure book them the top spot in the wild card standings ahead of Green Bay. I do find it fascinating, Joe, knowing where the Vikings and even the Packers sit in the 4 or in the 5 and 6 spots as it corresponds to the 3 and 4, as you can see in the standings right there. The Buccaneers and the Rams, the champions of the NFC South and NFC West, respectively. What those numbers would look like if the Vikings and the Packers have to go on the road. Could Minnesota or Green Bay be booked as a slight favorite? Only time will tell. Monday night in Las Vegas next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. It is a Tuesday looking back on a Monday night doubleheader to end out week 15 of this NFL regular season. First game about a half an hour ahead of our start in Las Vegas. We have shared the Vikings a dominant win 30-12 over the Chicago Bears. Minnesota, the team flirting with the postseason, well, firmly into the postseason, but based on their playoff positioning around the NFC. The Falcons, the team in our second game, Joe, heading to Las Vegas, still in that playoff chase, trying to stay afloat in the NFC South race for the top spot in the division. Atlanta desperately needed to snap a 4-game losing skid last night in Las Vegas. And at the end of the day, based on the result, that is what they do. Although it wasn't overly impressive by any means. That 4-game skid now snapped for the Dirty Birds as the Falcons win 15-9 on the road in Sin City. They cover ever so slightly as a 5.5-point road favorite because, Joe, the Las Vegas Raiders, in the only touchdown scored for that Raiders offense of the night, with 2 minutes and 54 seconds remaining in regulation to make it a single-score game. Daniel Carlson comes on for the point after try. The extra point attempt is blocked. Would have made it a 5-point game. It may be a Vegas cover. Instead, the Falcons block it. They intercept a Hail Mary try on the final play of regulation. Atlanta ends out that 4-game skid with a 15-9 win last night in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Raiders, I give them credit for not quitting, but you rolled out a third-string quarterback who's not really a quarterback in the NFL. Let's be realistic here. The first 10 possessions of the game for them, Ben, he went 9 of 20 for 65 yards, no touchdowns, but a pick. And if it wasn't for the final couple of possessions there where they started to go up-tempo, he finished 13 of 18, $135, Desmond Ridder. He did get the touchdown, but had the interception. And really, it was just too little too late. They gave Atlanta way too much of a cushion here in this one in order to be able to come back. But again, I'd rather win ugly than not win at all. And that's exactly how Atlanta has to look at this.
Exactly, Joe. And that is exactly how Atlanta must look at it. It's exactly how I assume the Falcons will look at it as well. Bijan Robinson last night, very good on the ground. 22 carries, 125 yards. Had a hefty minus money price to hit pay dirt. That did not come through. In fact, the only touchdown for Atlanta, that was Kirk Cousins to Drake London, as our guy Tom Vecchio spelled out for you yesterday on the show as well. The Falcons did record a safety as well before the end of the opening half. But, Joe, you're right. Winning ugly, winning a game you had to have on the road for whatever it might be, Desmond Ridder revenge game, all of that, you got the job done. You snapped the 4-game skid. You're a game back now of the Buccaneers for that top spot in the NFC South. We'll talk about Atlanta's outlook in just a moment. But now let's talk about reality. This was a Falcons team with the acquisition for $180 million this offseason of Kirk Cousins that was supposed to easily cruise to a divisional crown within the NFC South and perhaps because of it, make some noise within the NFC postseason. It has been anything but. It has been incredibly disappointing based on those preseason expectations for Kirk Cousins and the Dirty Birds this year. And you look at the results last night offensively. Kirk Cousins, 11 of 17 for 112 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Joe, what is not working for Kirk and the Falcons right now?
It seems to me, Ben, like there's just the rhythm is not there. There seems to be a lot of confusion, and I don't think Kirk Cousins is healthy. And I think this also says a lot about their number one draft pick, doesn't it? Because if you were ever going to make a change or thought the kid was good enough to be able to step in, Michael Penix Jr. would be in the lineup at this point. But I think they realize maybe now is not the time to bring him in, and they're going to keep rolling out with Kirk Cousins. But it's clear, Ben, you have to adjust at this point. Something is not right there, and I don't know if they're just hoping it gets better magically, but something needs to change with this offense because 15 points against a Raider defense ain't going to get it done moving forward.
So 10 consecutive losses now for Las Vegas. It's a disastrous season. The Raiders were already mathematically eliminated from playoff contention entering last night. But I mentioned the 10-game losing skid for Las Vegas, Joe, because entering last night, in the 9-game skid, the Raiders had played to the over in 6 of those 9. They had allowed at least 27 points in 7 of the 9 losses in a row. So you figured that if Atlanta was going to find its rhythm, what a wonderful opportunity to end out Week 15 on the road in Las Vegas. On the 4-game skid for the Falcons, Kirk Cousins did not throw a single touchdown pass and threw an interception, at least one, in all 4 losses. 8 INTs in total. He did throw a touchdown pass last night to Drake London, who was the Falcons' leading receiver. 3 grabs, 53 yards, and that touchdown strike. But still, yet again, another interception. In the last 5 games for the Falcons, here in the second half of this season, where you are trying to figure things out to figure out your playoff position, 1 touchdown to 9 INTs for the Dirty Birds. That is what Kirk Cousins has done. And I'll just say this. They drafted a guy 8th overall, who it made no sense when they drafted Michael Penix Jr. 8th overall. We thought it was a store for the future. Maybe, Joe, if they are trying to hunt down the Bucs to end out this season, could they look to a quarterback change in Atlanta?
I thought they would have done it already, Ben. Now it's too late. You've already told us that you don't think he's good enough in order to be able to step in, because why would you not have already brought him in this spot here where you were on a 4-game losing streak? So, and again, the Raiders would have been the perfect spot, the perfect team, right, to unload things and say, all right, here you go. Take on a 2-11 team here. And instead, you rolled out Kirk Cousins. So it's clear the organization believes it's do or die with Kirk Cousins here and that the kid's just not ready. That's the way I see it here, because otherwise it makes no sense why you would not have rolled him out against the Raiders.
And it makes no sense why you would have drafted him in the first place, given the financial investment into Kirk Cousins. Is this a 36-year-old quarterback that looks a little bit hobbled and stale, recovering from an Achilles injury last year. Perhaps, for whatever reason, it has not worked out. And there is so much talent offensively for Atlanta. At least the defense did its part last night. Desmond Ridder in his revenge game. He was drafted by the Falcons in the third round of the 2022 NFL Draft. Was about what Desmond Ridder was in his 17 career starts in Atlanta, and thus why the Falcons looked to part ways. The Raiders have lost 10 straight. They are 2-12. They are at the bottom of the barrel within the NFL alongside the Giants. Those two teams will now be competing for the number 1 overall pick next April in the 2025 NFL Draft. Again, Joe, we're going to talk about the Falcons and their overall outlook the remainder of this season. If they have life at all in the NFC South, what do you think the Raiders are going to do this offseason? Of course, draft a quarterback, more than likely with a top 3, top 5 pick, potentially number 1 overall. Do you think Antonio Pierce returns for a second season as the head coach?
I don't know. I mean, I know he's liked in the locker room, but at this point, what difference does it make? I do think changes, especially if they end up getting the number 1 or 2 pick here. And that's a quarterback. I don't know that Antonio Pierce is the guy that I want molding a young quarterback in this league.
I'm trying to see, Joe, if we have number 1 pick odds out right now. I do not believe we do. We'll do some research during the break, and we'll talk about the Falcons in the NFC South next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
You offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid. The Atlanta Falcons did what they had to do last night in Las Vegas. Heck, they even covered a 5.5-point spread, courtesy of a safety and a blocked PAT in the final 3 minutes of regulation to snap a 4-game skid against the Raiders and get back to an even 500. Joe, here's the incredibly compelling thing about the Falcons and where they sit now in the NFC South. Up until about 3 weeks ago, before the 4-game slide really became that of a 4-game slide, it made us question everything we know about Kirk Cousins and Atlanta. The Falcons were in pole position, despite not blowing people out, despite not looking overly impressive for a good majority of this season, to win the NFC South, because the Falcons, against the only other team that really could give them competition, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, had swept the Bucs in the regular season. So as long as they matched the Bucs, who at the time were a 4-6 team in terms of the record, Atlanta would hold that decisive head-to-head tiebreaker. Well, the tiebreaker only matters if you have the same mark, and right now the Bucs have won 4 straight. The Falcons have snapped a 4-game skid to get back to an even 500. When you look at the Falcons' price to win the NFC South, based on last night and a victory, yes, a win in Las Vegas, does Atlanta have any life in your mind to contend for the division?
No. I mean, looking at the schedules, we were just laughing, Ben. I mean, Atlanta, piece of cake, except they got to take on the Giants this week. They'll have the Commanders, who are also battling here, Ben, in a big way. So that is going to be the most important game coming up for them. Then they end with the Panthers. And then in the meantime, you got the Bucs, who are at the Cowboys. So what? Then they got the Panthers and the Saints. And even though the Bucs got swept, I believe, by Atlanta this year, they're still a game up. And I don't see any game that the Bucs have that is going to compare to the Commanders game in 2 weeks for Atlanta. So I think it's very much in favor of Tampa being able to win it once again.
Absolutely so, Joe. And that price for the Falcons to win the NFC South even 3-4 weeks ago in minus money. The number now for the Buccaneers is minus 360 to win the divisional crown as of this moment. That number, had they split the season series, would be closer to a minus 600 price. It just is because of that looming tiebreaker. Joe, if Atlanta does miss out on the postseason, frankly, they are not going to contend for an NFC wildcard spot, despite the fact that technically they're only 2 games behind Washington, a team they play in just a few weeks. It will be seen as a failure. There is no doubt about it. And I wonder, as we talked Michael Penix Jr. before the break, if it would expedite the timeline of a quarterback change in the A. It felt like you invested $180 million, $100 million guaranteed over a 4-year contract length in Kirk Cousins, so that when you selected Michael Penix Jr. 8th overall, you were going to have him play in 2 to 3 years, which would be near the end of his rookie deal, and not really get a good look if you wanted to pick up his 5th-year option for a guy that is not necessarily a 20-year-old rookie even entering the NFL. Michael Penix Jr., I believe, is already 23 years old, if not 24. If the Falcons miss out on the postseason, I wonder if that changes the thought process of what this offseason has in store for Atlanta.
Atlanta is going to be very interesting because you're right. They have all the pieces necessarily, certainly on the offensive side of the ball. They did have a big issue this year on the defensive side of the ball, trying to be able to rush the quarterback, which cost them a couple of games, Ben, certainly early on. But I think it's all going to come down to the real health of Kirk Cousins and that Achilles. And is he going to be a little bit more mobile moving forward? Because it looks to me like he's trying to play through it, and they're allowing him to try to play through it, Ben, which means I don't think they believe Penix Jr. is the answer at this point right now.
Yeah, I wonder. It's not like he was a developmental piece like an Anthony Richardson that you had to reach and you could store him and give him some time to develop within the NFL behind the veteran presence that is Kirk Cousins. Michael Penix Jr. had played college football for a very long time, is an older rookie. You would think kind of like a Bo Nix. You let him take a couple of lumps, and he'll be ready to go. A fascinating process for Atlanta, to say the least. Again, the Falcons, as Joe mentioned, have the Giants at home on Sunday. They're a hefty favorite for that game before a road trip to Landover to take on the Commanders and then end out the year at home against Carolina. You would expect the Falcons, and they will be favored to do so, to win 2 of their final 3 to get to 9-8 and have a winning record to test the Buccaneers. But if Tampa wins out, they're good. Even if Tampa drops a game, they are fine at 10-7, a game in front of the Falcons. Joe, let's take an early peek at the NFC playoff picture at this moment, because both the Vikings and the Falcons winning last night does impact that postseason picture. The Lions still the top team, as we have detailed numerous times already in the show, despite the injuries and the loss at home to Buffalo on Sunday afternoon. The Eagles right there. The Lions have the tiebreaker based on better conference record. The Bucs now the 3 seed. It will be interesting, Joe. The champion of the NFC South, Tampa the favorite. The champion of the NFC West, the Rams the favorite. How it looks in terms of their playoff positioning, trying to host whoever they decide would be a better matchup of those top 2 wild card teams, the Vikings and the Packers right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a battle, but obviously, I mean, the Seahawks gave one away this weekend. I mean, they weren't even competitive there. Now you got worried quarterback concerns there with Geno. And it does look like the path for the West is going, as well as Atlanta, really, quite honestly. You got to win that division, guys. Otherwise, I don't see you catching any of those teams in the middle.
And just to say, Joe, Washington right now, who occupies that final wild card spot, is minus 430 to reach the postseason, which should show you that whether it's the NFC West or, frankly, even the teams in the NFC South, whatever it might be, you got to win your division. The Rams minus 165 to win the West, by the way. We'll talk more about this on the other side of the break.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
"15 weeks of the NFL regular season now in the books. Of course, now with the extended regular season, 18 total weeks. Do our quick math. Only 3 remain. And Joe, as we focus on the NFC playoff picture after the doubleheader of Monday Night Football, in the Vikings winning, in the Falcons winning, let's try to correlate where the playoff standings are to what the odds are telling us for the postseason outlook as well. There you see your divisional leaders on the left. Again, the Lions still that top spot in the NFC, still a minus money favorite to be the 1 seed at minus 125, and they currently own that tiebreaker advantage against Philadelphia based on conference win percentage. The wild card spots feel mostly firmed up as well. The Vikings are 12-2. The Packers are 10-4. The Commanders are 9-5. Sure, only a game lead over the Seahawks, just 2 in front of the Falcons, who they play next weekend, 2 weekends from now. But Washington minus 430 to reach the NFC playoffs as well. So, Joe, let me start with the wild card. Do you think any of those teams currently in the 3 spots would change hands or positions in these final 3 weeks of the regular season?
Yeah, I don't think so, Ben. I mean, it would appear to me, I think the Vikings and the Packers have solidified their spots there, mostly because I don't see them catching the Lions here at this point. And the Commanders, again, looking at their schedule, Ben, down the stretch here, it's a very doable schedule here with they've got the Eagles coming up. That might be a problem. But the Falcons, as currently playing, and the Cowboys, that puts them at 11 wins. 11-6. Nobody's catching them. I think those 3 are locked in at this particular point.
Yeah, I would agree as well, Joe. And it's still an important game this weekend, week 16, between the Commanders and the Eagles, because if Philly wins outright, the Eagles clinch the NFC East. The odds not even available for the NFC East at this moment. Theoretically, a Commanders win in winning out and the Eagles dropping their final 3 games could allow Washington to win the division. We don't really expect that to be the case. And the Birds, trying to extend their win streak to 11 consecutive, are a 3.5-point favorite in Landover on Sunday. That one of the marquee matchups in the early window, kicking at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Joe, let's talk about those Birds and the Lions in the top spot. Again, Detroit, still the favorite to win the NFC Championship right now. Detroit, despite the injuries, still favored at minus 125 to be the 1 seed. But, Joe, if you had to bet these 2 teams right here, right now, as they are still the short front runners to win the conference crown in the NFC, separated by just 30 cents, who would get your wager?
Sheesh. I don't know that anybody's playing better than Eagles. Do you? It's the Lions. There's so many more question marks. The Eagles are really not. Any of that drama that we were told about, Ben, I guess, between the quarterback and his wide receiver and, a defensive player letting the cat, like all of that water under the bridge, like we said. You keep winning games, nothing else matters. And right now, all the Eagles continue to do, it seems like, Ben, is get better and better and better. And meanwhile, the Lions keep getting more hurt, and more hurt. And that's not a good recipe.
You feel for the fans in the Motor City, a generational season for the Lions that might be defined in the final month by catastrophic and season-ending injuries. We'll look at the injury report for the Lions when we start our NFL news and notes in hour number 2. And I'll just say this. The Lions remain the favorite, right, to win the NFC title and to be that 1 seed. If for whatever reason those odds flip to be the number 1 overall seed, especially if Philadelphia is, and they would host a potential NFC championship game where the Lions have to go outside to win a conference crown, they are no longer, that being Detroit, going to be the favorites to win the NFC crown. Quickly here, Joe. The 3 seed, the 4 seed. The Buccaneers and the Rams, the favorites currently, and in that top spot in the NFC South and West, respectively. Both teams, 14-1 to win the NFC Championship. Do either, in your mind, present value to make a deeper postseason run?
Listen, if you're looking for a dark horse here, those 2 obviously at double-digit prices. Well, guess what, Ben? They can beat just about anybody on any given day on that list here. So that's going to be very interesting down the stretch. Heck, they almost beat Detroit last year.
Both organizations with some playoff pedigree in the last 3-4 years or so. Hour 2 next.